Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am thrilled to introduce our guest today, Declan Doherty. He's the Assistant Academy Director at Racing Louisville Academy. He is a coach for one of my daughters, or actually both of my daughters, and amongst several other here in the Louisville area and across Kentucky. He is someone who our daughters have really gravitated toward, and we'll announce something a little bit later, but he'll be leaving us at the end of this year. And on the carpool ride home, all I heard was everyone in their car upset that you were leaving because of the connection that you've made with them over the years. You're a fan favorite amongst the parents. We love having you and talking to you, and really appreciate everything you do for us. And so one of the things, if you're watching this for the first time, or if you've watched several other episodes and you're wondering why am I talking soccer on a podcast called Combat to Commerce? Well, as we've mentioned earlier, the idea is to highlight not just the military, their families, entrepreneurs, spouses, but also their children, and then people who are in the community making a difference, helping grow the next generation of leaders. And if you have your children in any kind of team sport or any sports at all, I think you were well aware that the lessons that these kids learn through team sports, through activity, through the losses they take, the adversity they face, the resiliency they build as a young child through their teenage years, I think there's probably a direct correlation to how they perform as adults in their professional career, whether it is in sports or business or military or whatever have you. And I think that is extremely important, raising children. And I can say, having moved several states throughout my career, several different locations, the one thing we tried to do was have our daughters in sports as a way not only to keep them physically fit, but it was an easy way for them to make friends. As we went to a new spot, they automatically had something in common no matter where we lived. So with that, I wanted to introduce Declan. Declan, I'll hand it over to you just to do a couple notes about yourself and just a quick introduction. So go ahead.
Thanks very much, man. And I was lucky to coach all three of your daughters at one stage.
Oh yeah, Amy too.
When Amy played, yeah, absolutely. My name is Declan Doherty. I'm currently the assistant director of coaching here at Racing Louisville Academy. Came to Louisville in probably 2019, I think, to take a job with the university women's team there, and then started on board with the club when they kicked up back in 2021, I think it was. And then I've been there kind of ever since. Love my time here as well, and certainly going to be sad to be leaving as well. I think that was probably one of the toughest days I've had, having to tell all the kids that I'm going to be moving on. Certainly wasn't easy, so I kept it very short and sweet and to the point that day. But yeah, no, I've loved my time here, and certainly will be sad to go when that day does come.
Yeah, could you do just a rundown of the academy, the racing academy, kind of what you all offer, what you do as a program?
Yeah, so we're essentially the youth academy for the club here, under the Soccer Holdings organization. So we have essentially youth teams on the boys and the girls side. So we have Blue City and Racing Academy, all the way from U8 all the way up to U19. And basically we've got kids that will compete in local area competition, and then we have teams that compete all the way up to regional level competition, and then we also have full kind of player pathway through a U23 team, which is known as the W League on the women's side, and the USL Academy League on the boys side, all the way through up to the pro teams, which we're very, very lucky to have here. It's something quite unique in this country. From where I'm from, and most countries or clubs across the world, most clubs have a pathway all the way from when you start playing at 4 or 5 all the way up to some form of first team football, whether that's professional, semi-professional, or just amateur. So I think for me, being able to work at a club here in this country that has the potential to be the bedrock of a community, where you can come in and have your first football or soccer experience here at the age of 3 or 4 and come all the way and play in that stadium as part of the pro team, I think is something pretty special, and that's something I know everybody at the club would love to see happen someday.
Oh yeah, no, it is something. Even as I can only imagine for the kids, but even as a parent, as you drop them off and you see the pro team, Blue City and Racing practicing on the adjacent fields,
Yeah.
And then the guests, when they just come over, the players come over, talk to them, cheer them on, and the support that they show for them is amazing. And the commitment from the coaches too. I don't want to understate how much you all commit to this. I mean, you on any given weekend, we're based out of Louisville. You could be in Pittsburgh, Buffalo, San Diego, Florida. You and I were in Florida down near Tampa a couple weeks ago, and we got North Carolina coming up. That is a lot. That's a huge commitment that you're doing, and I know these kids really appreciate it. But I also noticed that you all with racing, you also have some other teams that kind of fall under your umbrella, like Oldham County, and I see other things. Are they sponsored or are they?
Yep. So they would be affiliate clubs. So essentially, we their directors are all kind of housed out of our offices here. So the Oldham director, Joe Jessup, works the desk directly beside me, and they run all the programming out of there. So again, it's all the resources that we have here with regards to, curriculum support, administrative help, everything like that is all basically just extended out to the club in Oldham and to Shelby County as well. So again, it's just trying to continue to be a hub for football in this community and kind of, help share what we can and kind of contribute where we can to continue to grow the game and get as many kids playing as possible, and help kind of keep kids developing and become kind of lifelong players and fans of the game for as long as they wish.
That's great. And if for those who are listening who are moving, if you're a soldier moving to Fort Knox and you have a kid who is in who's competitive soccer, competitive athlete, there are networks of families throughout the area. So we live in Elizabethtown, which is about 40-minute drive, that we all carpool up the kids together. We have families in Bardstown. I know we have families in Lexington. I mean, all over. And each of those teams, there's like a little pocket of families that kind of help each other out because, when we first heard about the program, it was like, wow, are we really going to drive that much, 5 or 6 days a week just for, games, practices when we have things local. And the local program here is great too. No doubt about it. I mean, whether it's Elizabethtown Football Club or Nelson Elite, a lot of really talented soccer players, a lot of really talented players, regardless of where you're at. But with that standing up, we had a couple of friends who were all joining at the same time, and we wanted to give it a shot, and we really loved it. We really enjoyed the program. It really does bring you all together. And one of the coolest parts, if you have a high school aged athlete, there is nothing cooler than during the high school season. Seems like every team you play, 3 or 4 kids on each high school's team. So while you might have rivalries between the schools, there's a handful, a pocket of parents who are going on the enemy side of the territory, shaking hands, and you kind of like, hey, I wish you well. Hope your kid is. Hope tonight they lose, but it is really awesome, and it just goes to show you how spread out your program is. That you have athletes from everywhere who come to this for the facilities, for the program, for the reputation, and then even just the integration with the pro team, where they have like military nights, family nights, right there in Lynn Family Stadium is amazing. The environment, I didn't grow up around soccer. Pittsburgh was mostly ice hockey, football, baseball. When I went to my first soccer game, a soccer match or football match, right? It blew my mind. It was like a party in the stands. It was like it felt like your heart was beating 100 miles an hour, just like the drums and the fans and everything else. So if you haven't attended a game, if you haven't attended a match, I highly encourage everyone listening to attend at least one pro soccer, pro football match. And I think regardless of what you may think about soccer ahead of time, if you haven't been around it, you will leave there a fan. And I truly believe that. And one other thing before we keep going, the coaches are phenomenal. When we watch you all play, while you do want to win, it seems that the development of the kids is almost the number one priority throughout the entire year. It looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have like a schedule plan on development, and depending on time of year, it shifts, right? Can you go into that and how you develop the players throughout the year and your practices?
Yeah, so I think our responsibility is essentially equipping each player that when they move on to that next step, they're ready for that next step, whatever that may be. Whether it's going on to play at high school, whether it's going on to play college, or whether it's just going up to play an age group up, or maybe they're moving from maybe a second team in an age group to like that first team in an age group. Trying to make sure they're as well equipped as we possibly can make them. So again, I think in youth football, and you've probably seen it at the hundreds of games that you've been to.
Yeah.
As a coach, you can very easily manipulate players in certain places. You can manipulate the game a certain way to help you win the game. But if I'm a grown man, I'm in my mid-30s, and I need to win a U14 game on a Saturday, then I've got issues. So I think for us, it's always just making sure we're trying to instill the correct habits, trying to instill the right ideas and the right approach for the players, so that they are doing the right thing that's going to serve them well. The older they get, the higher the level that they play against. And making sure that we prepare them as best as we possibly can. Because if you want to win some games in the short term, that's great for that moment, but ultimately it's going to catch up with the kids further down the line, and that's not what you want to happen to them. So we want to make sure we try and prepare them as best as we possibly can. Now, I promise you, there's no coach has ever gone into a game not wanting to win.
Yeah.
But at the same time, no kid has ever gone into a game not wanting to win either. But making sure we understand that even if the result doesn't go their way, we can reassure them that they're progressing along the right track. And with that, we have essentially a periodization that we go throughout the year, which is kind of predetermined at the start of the year. So it goes in maybe a couple of attacking blocks. So the first 2 weeks might be attacking, and it might be topic A and topic B. And then next week, kind of no matter what we've really worked, no matter how the game's gone the week before, we have like what we're working on is already predetermined and set out. And we obviously allow our coaches the flexibility within that. If there's an area of the game that players are continuously struggling with, that they still can sprinkle that in and address that throughout their training sessions. But we have an overarching kind of theme and topic each week that all our coaches have to kind of follow to make sure the kids have getting enough of a good enough dose of each kind of topic as we go throughout the course of the year. I think if we just coach what we wanted to, I'd just do attacking and shooting every single session, and no kid would know how to defend. So making sure we kind of cover all bases for the kids.
For sure. Yeah, no, I hear you. And then I think with the facilities you have, with the fields themselves, it allows, I think, probably the team, the club, a lot more training opportunities than the general grass field, especially like days like this week where we're getting a lot of rain.
Yeah.
Probably the number of practice sessions you get in, and then the exponential development the kids have throughout the year. It really makes a difference. So with that, like over your career coaching and just life, you've seen a lot of great athletes. A lot of our kids have aspirations, whether it's college, professionals, or even just to be a really good high school player, a club player, a good teammate. What would you say, from your point of view, makes separates a young athlete from their peers? What is there a certain trait, a singular one? Is it a collection of traits that help them stand out and separate, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I saw that. That's a really good question. I think something that's consistent is with those that I've worked with that have gone to a really high level and playing in professional football, are players that there's one or two that just had the belief and the mindset that they were going to get there no matter what. But the important factor with those players is they backed it up every day in their actions. You get some that have talent and ability that are like, I'm going to be a top player. I am a top player. I'm going to be a top player. And that confidence gets them so far. But the ones that don't kind of back it up with their actions and their determination and willingness to kind of outwork everybody every day, still reach a high level, but probably don't reach the heights that they can. Whereas there's people that just have that relentless work rate and that, I would say, the resilience to when they do get knocked back a little bit, to respond to it with the right attitude and come and approach it and almost attack the next day, are the ones that I've often seen just kind of tend to always just perform well. and will always kind of continue to elevate themselves and continue to just get better throughout the course of their career. And then when you do see them go on to life, whether it's after sport, seeing the characteristics in those people, they're always successful in some form of industry that they go into, whatever their passion is, whether they go into teaching, whether they go into business, or whatever it may be. You can just see those traits kind of continue to follow through. So I would say that ability to kind of have that belief in yourself, to have the willingness to outwork everybody that you're surrounded by. And then I would say as well, some of the athletes that I would say have really, I would say, exceed their ability are the people who have the ability to lift other people around them and bring other people with them as well. So I think there's quite a few. Very lucky to work with some special people that have that ability to kind of bring people with them and uplift people around them while still having that belief and work ethic and resilience. I would say now there's a couple of those definitely spring to mind.
So as a coach, how do you nurture that? Is it, I'm sure some people are kind of born with it. Their family, whatever the case is there anything as a coach that they kind of train you to help nurture that belief in themselves, or that hard work? Or
yeah, I think I would say it kind of comes with now some experience, and I think players that have that self-belief, I think making sure that you can continue to like feed that belief that they have, but making sure they understand what helps them get to that level and what helps them be special and what helps them be just that little bit different is that kind of willingness to continue to work and back it up kind of on a given basis. And if they say they want to, I think those that are like really ambitious and confident in their self, being able to use that and remind them of it in moments where they maybe fall just a little bit shy of that work rate or that determination. They say, hey, I want to play in a World Cup, for example. It's an easy conversation of, hey, this is what you still want to do this? You're like, yeah, all right, well, your attitude and your effort's not matching that. All right, okay, your behavior today is not matching that. So have you changed your mind? What's wrong? And being able to kind of steer them that way. Those players that probably lack a little bit of belief, I think it's just always being able to tap into moments that they do well. I think you'd find those players that are lacking a little bit of confidence, but have the ability, have the work ethic, have the determination. Just reminding them that they're good people, they're good players, and trying to catch them in moments when they do really well, I think just brings more kind of. I always tend to get you. I feel you get more out of people when you are able to point out how well they do things in certain moments, as opposed to challenging them the opposite way, with a bit more of a fear of failure, is what I would say for sure. But in terms of trying to, I would say those that can bring people with them, and this is where, Joe, I've learned something really working with younger girls and younger players over the last number of years. It's been really helpful because you will find players that have that ability to lead and ability to bring people with them. When you're wrapped into like middle school, high school girl drama and you want to be that leader, it's tough to bring people along with you because maybe some people just aren't as mature as you at that point and don't really want to listen to you. Trying to make sure they don't get discouraged from the actions that they're putting in. We have one young woman in our club who's going to be leaving this year now, but she absolutely has all those abilities of a leader. She's driven. She's going to be phenomenal at what she does in life. But there's been moments throughout the years where you can see her really wanting to lead and trying to lead and doing all the right things, and just maybe through a lack of maturity from some other players, they don't. I'm just not interested. But just in those moments, making sure she doesn't get discouraged from trying to lead and trying to do the right things, and just encourage her that she's doing the right thing and to keep trying, and eventually it'll all click and it'll all make sense.
Yeah, no, I could see that, especially as the field narrows, as you age and you go from local team to a club team, professional team. How, one, giving them, hey, do your goals match your effort, right? And then two, maintaining that confidence and that drive, that, like the player you just mentioned, and keeping them positive and pursuing that path and not letting them to be discouraged. Because eventually they're going to find, as they continue to lead, they'll find their level with like-minded players across the board. I mean, I don't say across the board because probably every level there's people who aren't giving as much effort. Like, Kobe Bryant's famous for, his level of effort in basketball versus some of his teammates, and even at the professional level. And so I could see encouraging that and keeping it going. And something that I also love that you guys do is the individual development plan that
Mm-hmm.
I think is invaluable. So in the military, and I'm sure civilian side too, you do those counselings, we call them, where
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is where you're at. You're on the right path, and this is where I'd like to see you make improvements. We do that in the military to kind of
Mm-hmm.
we call it an azimuth check to kind of show that we're going in the right direction. I think with the club, I think using that is amazing because one, it causes the athletes to do some internal reflection because they're building the
Mm-hmm.
plan, not the parents,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to have that honest conversation with the coaches. And sometimes I'm sure those two paths don't meet, where they may think one thing and the coaches are seeing another. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that having that is great because that's a lot of times that's probably for a lot of kids, and I mean teenagers too, the first time they get probably true feedback
Mm-hmm.
without sugarcoating it.
Yeah.
That I think is helpful and helps them,
Mm-hmm.
because you can be the best, I don't know, kid in your little neighborhood and think you're the best player ever, but then
Mm-hmm.
you go against other competition and you see where you're at and how much you need to work to maintain
Yep.
that level and get higher. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. That's great. Um, so with that, uh, when it comes to all, you have all these girls, and you have. Do you coach the boys too?
Not as much, only sparingly anytime if there's coverage needed, but not as often. But I have coached boys pretty often in the past.
Yeah. So because you mentioned the high school age, a lot of the high school kids have conflicting requirements or activities, right? I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
getting older. There's, like my daughter, obviously they do track as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those seasons overlap. You got educational programs. You have, the activities of, prom, dances, what have you. Um, how does the club balance allowing the kids to pursue those normal teenage
Mm-hmm.
things while also still embrace their growth with the club? I mean, I know they're never punished or anything like that
Mm-hmm.
by not
Yeah,
because of life events, but how does the club view
for
things like
sure.
that?
It's honestly trying to find a balance, and I think all of our coaches have all played multiple sports growing up at some point, and
Mhm,
I went through it as an athlete playing multiple sports and being told by one coach that, hey, you need to give this sport up and just focus on this one. And my first instinct when that conversation came my way was just to tell them where to go. So I knew I'd never want a kid to feel that way that I felt, like I was being pipped against another sport. So we always encourage them if they want to play other sports, it's absolutely no problem. We ask that if it's during season that they still try and make sure they're able to attend some training of ours. So if we're not asking that they be at every single training and not any for their other sport. But we just ask that they're always upfront and honest with us, let us know, and still try to be here when they can.
mhm,
And if they're upfront and honest with that, like honestly, there's no issue as well, because I think for the majority of kids that enter our academy, 99% of them are not going to play professionally.
mhm,
So for them, we want this to be an enjoyable experience, and we don't want them to go away from the game or go away from football because we push them or tried to push them too hard in certain moments to stay with us. So finding that balance is what we always try and work to do. The other social settings like prom and dances, I would say I'm probably less lenient with. Um, and I think a big thing as well is we always try to make sure all the players in the team understand that they've made a commitment, not to their coaches, but to their teammates and to their team for the course of the year, and to make sure that they kind of continue to be good teammates and honor that. We talk a lot about we have our pitch model, which talks
mhm,
about all the kind of pillars standards of the club. We want to make sure they embody all of those as well. So again, if we understand that proms are we understand for some players, like, I couldn't care less about my prom. I've got a game. That's where I'm
mhm,
going. And some, they've been waiting for their prom for 4 years. So it's a big deal. We want to make sure we try and accommodate that as best we possibly can. So once we know as much of that stuff ahead of time, we can try and maneuver games to allow players to be at as much as they possibly can. But we want to make sure that they know that if we try to do that for them, they still honor their commitment to their team and make sure they can be as committed as they can when their schedule allows.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So what about, you've been coaching for a while and playing for a while? Is there a most memorable moment you have as being part of racing? Is there something that really stands out over the years?
There's been quite a few, and I'd say they're in different elements now. Seeing certain kids go through periods where they're just struggling performance wise, and then all of a sudden they have a game where just everything kind of clicks, and they might just have a really good game, and you see them come off the field just excited for themselves, and just getting through that little bit of struggle and coming out the other end of it. There's been multiple of those that always are the days that you're like, this is one of the reasons I love this job that we do. I will say this is probably a bit of an odd one. A few years ago, we had a young player in our club lose a parent, and I remember I was real kind of tough time now, but I remember just going to the service, and just seeing the amount of girls from not only that player's team, but from other teams just be there, and the place was flooded with just support for her, and so for me, that's something that I think is just amazing about youth sport, or just sport in general. Like you mentioned about moving, when you move, your daughters automatically have friends or people in common just by being a part of something like that. So for me, seeing so many people there that day, and then in the weeks leading up and the weeks surrounding it and past it, that for me, for as awful as the day as it was and as sad as it was, that's something that just made me really proud to be a part of the club and proud to be a part of that community. To see people kind of rally around one of their own. So I know it's a bit of an odd one, but that's something that really
No, I
sticks
think
with
it's
me.
amazing. I mean, I think
Yeah.
for those who don't know, the academy's not been around that long, and
Mm-hmm.
I think when we first started, it was, I don't want to say there were, well, you could say there were maybe some cliques, like we all got
Oh
along,
yeah.
but you had
Oh, absolutely.
E2 Grub families, Louisville families, you name it. And then over the years,
Mm-hmm.
we've kind of merged together, and the kids we all look at them like they're our own kids, right? Like I was saying, with the
Mm-hmm.
high school games, we're cheering them on even though they're playing against their
Yeah,
kids. And I
exactly.
think to see that community grow so fast, and the support,
Mm-hmm.
it is really special. I could tell you that probably one of the coolest things I saw that I think inspired a lot of our girls, whether it's to play high school, college, or whatever it is, was when Mario Sanchez's daughter got pulled up
Mm-hmm.
for one of the games, and she didn't get in, but the
Yeah.
highlight, the her peers seeing a
Mm-hmm.
player on the big field with the first team was something that I think that you just don't get that every day, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we are
Yeah.
blessed to have a team here tied with our program, and to have one of our own on
Mm-hmm.
the professional field was amazing. And so
Yeah.
I think down the road, as more and more kids make it through the system,
Mm-hmm.
I believe a lot of them will be like, hey, the first game I ever went to was seeing, it's Ella Sanchez, correct?
Yeah.
I think seeing her on the field,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you'll hear those stories, because we're in Pittsburgh. It's like I said, it's ice hockey, so there's a lot of
Yeah.
kids who are first time they played was because Sidney Crosby at 18 years old
Mm-hmm.
played professional, and so I think you see a lot of that. And so I think there are moments like this that will be talked about for years down the road. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And I
pretty
will
awesome.
say, even just for us as a staff, every time, whether it's one of the boys comes through the academy and makes their protein debut,
Yeah,
Hayden made his protein debut the other week, and seeing, like you said, seeing those girls, and seeing Ella going on to play professionally now as well down in Mexico is
yeah,
just is really, really cool, and something that it's probably the first day of it today. Our W League team started their training for the summer, but seeing girls that have come through our academy for a few years, have gone on to play college and come back here to play in the summer.
yeah,
Just seeing them all again, they're a bit more physically taller and more mature, kind
yeah.
of grown young women, as opposed to the girls they were just in high school. So seeing that growth and development in them, seeing them come back here is always really cool as well.
That's great. So Declan, we've been talking for about 30 minutes. And I know you're busy, so just one more question for you. and this is really just advice maybe from you to aspiring players on kind of what advice would you give to a young athlete who is, whether they play, doesn't, regardless of whatever sport, what advice would you give a young athlete to pursue, to help them in pursuit of their goals, whether it's professional, college, just great high school? What advice would you have based off of everything you've seen?
Yeah, I think the simplest, and I think back to even the moody, temperamental teenager that I was as well when I played. I think just having a great attitude and a great work ethic to every day that you show up, I think is just goes such a long way. I'll tell you, any coach, like that player that shows up with a great attitude and great work ethic every day, those are the kids you love coaching, and you love seeing show up every day. And I think if you have that approach of being excited to be there, wanting to work hard and get better, it's going to just carry you. It's going to carry you so far. You can definitely get a long way in life with just energy and enthusiasm. And I think that it's the exact same for sport. So that ability to work hard and enjoy what you do is as simple as that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Declan. And I'm going to put the Academy's website in the description notes. So if anyone's listening who's not part of the program, they could easily find it and reach out to, I think it's Kristen Wallace or anyone for signing up or potentially tryouts in the future. But Declan, I want to thank you. You are going to be missed, not just by the players, the parents as well. It's always great to talk to you, and we are truly appreciative of everything you've done for our kids, how you helped them grow over the years, and the confidence that you've instilled in them. Because even when they're playing a bad game, they're not being yelled at; they're being coached. Mm-hmm. You pull them aside and hey, have you thought about this? Have you looked at it this way? Or have the confidence to beat that player one-on-one. And you can really see the development in our players over the years. And I know Susan, I'm speaking for Susan and probably every other coach or every other parent out there. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for us. And I wish you the best of luck at Penn State. And hopefully I can catch a game if you guys come to Pitt, and I'll be in the stands wearing a Penn State hat. So
perfect. I'll have to get you one then. That's it.
Please do.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciate having me on for this one. Thank you very much.
Always. Thank you, Declan.